everyone, I'm Miss Sheila from the Hampton Bays Public Library Children's Room. Today we are going to be doing a sewing craft and make these Peep Pets that look like those little marshmallow treats. For some of you, you have been sewing with us a few times and we've seen some great results. For some of you, this will be the first time you're attempting something like this. We'll be using a real needle and thread, and I will show you all the steps. If you need a little help or want some more materials, please feel free to come in the library. Sewing is a skill that takes a long time to master. I am still working on my skills myself, so be patient with yourself. This isn't a craft that you can get done in a very short amount of time. You may do a little one day and come back to it and do a little more the next day. That's fine. So let's get started and make some Peeps Pets. So let's get started with our Peeps bunny. You will see on the back that there are 3 holes. This is where we're going to put the eyes later, so just keep an eye on that. In your bag, you have some straight pins and some safety pins and a needle. We're going to use that in a moment. You have some embroidery thread and the pieces for the fronts and backs of the eyes, which I'm going to put to the side for now. The first thing we're going to do is thread the needle. So you can pull the needle out, put this to the side, and open one of the skeins of yarn. You don't want to use too long of a piece, especially if you have not sewn before. It will be too hard. So that's sort of a reasonable piece. You need to find a scissors, and I'm going to cut that off. And the first thing we're going to do is thread our needle. Okay, go ahead and take the ends and slip it through the needle and pull it all the way through. Even up the bottom. And now we need to put a knot in the bottom. And this is the way I do it. I wrap the thread around my finger and tuck that in and pull. You want to get the knot as far down to the bottom as you can, but don't worry if you have a little left over. You can take your scissor and just trim off the bottom. So now we're ready to start to make some stitches. Now you can peel off the white sheet. The 2 pieces of fabric are together with some spray adhesive, so they'll stick together. If you feel it's coming apart or you want to make it a little stronger, you can put in one of these straight pins, or even better, a safety pin that closes so you can work. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start right at the bottom and move our way around both of the ears and stop here. So I'm going to go in between the 2 layers, and I'm going to take my needle and push it through the top layer and pull all the way through. Let me make it a little, okay. So now I am all the way through. Now this is where you can make a choice. You can go down to the bottom and come through, or if you prefer, you can stitch down and come back up. So I'm going to go around. Both are fine. And I'm going to stitch around, and there I have the first stitch. And just keep going. Don't pull too tightly on the stitches or it will start to pucker the fabric. You can just pull straight through. And that one's a little high. I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna do another stitch. Take your time. It's all a matter of practicing. And you can turn the fabric to make it a little easier. You will have probably noticed in your kit you have a bunny that's one color and the thread is a very different color, so that it's easy to see as we learn to stitch. And we're just gonna keep going around. So I'm gonna speed up the camera a little until I run out of thread, and I'll show you how to tie it off and we'll start a new piece of thread. So here we are. I have very little thread left. I'm going to need to get a new piece. So what I'm going to do is separate the two pieces of fabric. I'm going to put the needle around. Instead of going straight through, I'm going to come in between. And then an easy way for you to do this is to just cut this off and tie the two ends. There are probably more elegant ways to do this, but this is an easy way, especially if you're just learning. And I'm gonna give it a double knot. You can see it's inside, and I'm gonna take my scissor and carefully trim off the edge without cutting the fabric. So, ready to get another piece of thread and start. Oops, a little tough to get it off. There we go. And we're going to continue around. Remember, don't make it too long. It should be not too much longer than the bottom of your arm. That's what's going to be comfortable. I'm going to thread that needle again. So you can see. You may want a grown-up to help you with this. That's always a good thing. It takes some practice. Gather the two ends and not always so easy. Make sure it's straight. Gather the two ends and roll it. Pull it down into a knot. I'm going to trim off the bottom just so that we don't have big bulges inside. So with our new piece of thread, we're going to go over here, go in between the two pieces of fabric and come right up. So those knots should be right across from each other. And then we can continue our stitching going around. Now, if the thread gets a little tangled, just take a moment, untangle it. Sometimes it's good to let it untwist, let it hang a little and let it untwist. we don't really realize how much we're twisting it as we're sewing. So just always remember, take a moment, straighten things out. You may find certain parts of this fabric are harder to put the needle through. Sometimes it's useful just to move the needle over the tiniest bit and it will go through much more easily. So that's a little too close. I'm gonna do that again. And just take your time. Sewing projects aren't always meant to be done in one sitting. You can do a little bit of stitching, put your work away carefully, and then come back to it. Just make sure it stays somewhere safe, somewhere where little hands can't get a hold of pins and needles. Put it away somewhere that only you or a grown-up can touch it. So I'm going to speed the camera up a little and continue stitching around the ears, and then we're going to start to stuff part of it and put the eyes in. So I've come to a stop at the bottom of the second ear. And now I think I'm going to put in the eyes and the nose. So when I turn my bunny over, I see the 3 holes that were punched. And I'm going to go in between and take out these pieces. So you have the front of the eye and then a back. And it's very important, once this goes on, it's very hard to pull it off, which makes it safe. So I'm going to take the hole furthest over and push this eye through. And then on the other side, I'm going to push this back on. Maybe, hopefully you can see. Also, something you may want a grown-up to help to make sure it's secure. So there's one. Now I'm going to put the nose. They're a little hard to pick up. And put the back on. Oops. Maybe I need some help. Okay. There we go. And then the second eye. Okay, so those should be secured. They should stay on. And now I'm going to put in a little bit of the fluff up in the ears, because this is a good spot that I can really access it before I sew too much closed. So I'm going to take a little bit out. You don't need all that much. And I'm going to put it, push it with your fingers. That adhesive will come away. And make a nice shape of an ear. And you don't want to put too much in because you're going to keep stitching, but enough for those ears. Okay, so now a lot of the adhesive has come away, so you want to line it back up, and this could be a good moment to use one of these safety pins. If you haven't used a safety pin before, you press them together, and the pin is very sharp. Pull it out. Line your rabbit up so that the edges are even. And we're gonna put the pin in and then secure it. These kind of pins were used a long time ago on babies to hold diapers on, if you can believe that. So there we go. Whoops, not quite. Okay, so push the fluff in. If you want to use a pin here or just hold it, that's fine. If you use a straight pin, that also works and is a common thing to use in sewing. You just want to put the pointy part of the pin away from where your fingers are going to be. So, and now I'm going to continue to sew around. I may need one more piece of thread, which is fine. And just continue. You can see my stitches are not perfect. I like to sew by hand, but I'm not that skilled at it, but that's not a problem. It gives it a nice handmade look. You can also, if you want, if you have a grown-up around who can help you sew with a sharper needle and finer thread, you could do that as well, or you could use thread that's the same color. But I think for beginning, it's easiest to learn with this kind of needle and thread that we can see clearly so that we know what we're doing. So I'm gonna speed up the camera a little and we're gonna stop to stuff a little more in a minute. Okay, so I've run out of thread. I've cut this, I'm gonna tie this off, and now I'm gonna stuff a little more of my Peep friend. For some of you, you've done a couple of sewing projects with us, which has been great. We've had some amazing results. For others, this may be the first time you've done one. So if you are having a little difficulty, or you need some more thread or needle, or maybe some more felt, please come in. Happy to help anyone. I'm gonna remove these pins. I'm gonna put this straight pin, which can be dangerous. I wanna put that right back on the felt so that it stays safe and doesn't fall on the floor. And then I'm gonna remove the safety pins as well. We wanna always put them back where they can't hurt anyone. And okay, so now let's take a little more of the fluff and stuff a little more. Starting to take shape. And if you find that your stitches are loose and a little bit of the fluff is coming through, you can take some thread and stitch around it, whatever you want to do. Could also take a little craft glue if things really need to be addressed, but you should be able to do it with a needle and thread. I like it pretty fluffy. Okay. As much as you can get in without making it too difficult to sew up the ends. I think I can squeeze a little more in. And I'm going to use that safety pin again. I'm going to line up these edges and safety pin it so that I can stitch through. A lot of sewing when you're sewing bigger things has to do with pinning things properly and aligning things so that you can easily sew. This is a little less exact. This fabric has a lot of give to it, and for kids I think it's easy to work with the adhesive rather than a lot of pins. So I need one more piece of thread. I don't want to run out this far in the game. One more threading, hopefully. Let's see. And there it goes. Make sure we don't have any knots. And I'm going to knot the end. It's a little repetitive, but each time you do it, you get a little bit better at it, which is nice. I'm going to trim that off and then sew from this side down to my starting place. I'm going to go in between. There was the knot that I finished with. I'm going to come this way. And we are in the home stretch. Now, this may take you a few days. That's fine. You're not meant to do it all in one sitting. You should take your time and enjoy it. You have enough thread that if you're not happy with your stitches, you can cut out the thread and start over if you're motivated to do so. So let me speed up the camera a little and we'll get down to the end. Okay, so we are very close to finishing, and you'll notice because the fluff is kind of moving the fabric around, your edges may not be as even. You may find you have to stop and make sure that they're in the right place. Okay, so we just have this little bit, so I'm going to unpin, and this is really the last chance to put any fluff in, and I'm going to just add a little bit more on the bottom, and you can move it around with your fingers. This is why we did those ears so early on, because now we really can't get back up there. And let me see, maybe one more little piece. I can't help myself. Okay. And so we just have this last piece to stitch. So let's line it up. For this, I am going to use the straight pin. You can use the safety pin if you're more comfortable. But I'm going to use the straight pin and finish. I'm actually going to come from this side. And you want it to really be sealed at the bottom so that if someone wants to play with it, it's secure and the fluff isn't coming out. So let's see. Okay, so this is my final stitch, and I'm actually gonna go right next to this stitch and come out in the middle. Now, if that's hard or you don't feel like you can do it, you can also just tie a knot. No one is going to notice, so I'm gonna try to. And there's the first knot that we made. I'm gonna take my needle and try to push that in a bit so no one sees it. And now finish off the Peep Pet. And there's one knot, two for good measure. I am very excited to see these. Please send us pictures or bring them in the library. We have seen some amazing sewing coming out of Hampton Bays. So let's keep it up. I'm going to remove that pin. And there we have our Peep Pet. Remember to put those straight pins, safety pins, and your sewing needle away so that no one gets their fingers or feet caught on them. Okay, and there we go.